People often say that an avoidant person simply runs away from love. But what if the deeper truth is far more uncomfortable? What if they are not actually running from you, but from the version of themselves that begins to appear when they are around you? When a deeply empathic person enters an avoidance world, emotions they have kept buried for years can suddenly rise to the surface. This is not simply a story about rejection or someone being afraid of commitment. It is an internal battle. What looks like obsession may actually be the psyche demanding that something buried finally be acknowledged and transformed. Avoidant behavior is often misunderstood. From the outside, they may seem cold, detached, or intentionally unavailable. But emotional distance is often less about cruelty and more about protection. Vulnerability can feel overwhelming to someone who has learned that depending on others is dangerous. Their emotional world becomes a place they survive by avoiding rather than exploring. Deep inside, there can still be a softer part of them that once wanted closeness, affection, understanding, and genuine connection. That part may have been pushed away after experiences of betrayal, neglect, rejection, or emotional abandonment. But burying those feelings does not make them disappear. They simply move into the unconscious, waiting for something powerful enough to bring them back. Then they encounter a superempath. What affects them is not just physical attraction or surface-level chemistry. The empath represents qualities the avoidant may have disconnected from long ago. Emotional openness, intuition, vulnerability, compassion, and the ability to connect without controlling another person. Those qualities can become a living reminder of something the avoidant once possessed, desired, or secretly wished they could become. And that creates a powerful contradiction. They feel drawn toward the empath because something about that person feels strangely familiar. Yet at the same time, they feel compelled to retreat because getting closer would mean confronting the emotions and wounds they have spent years trying to escape. Around the empath, they may feel genuinely understood, not simply seen for what they do, the role they play, or the image they present, but recognized as a complicated human being carrying wounds they rarely reveal. That kind of emotional recognition can awaken a longing for intimacy that the avoidant has worked hard to suppress. The empath does not necessarily force them to open up. Sometimes their presence alone creates an invitation to become vulnerable, and that can feel threatening. They want connection, but connection requires exposure. They crave understanding, yet being understood can make them feel exposed. So they may pull away, disappear, become distant, change the subject, or suddenly shut down. But something has already changed. Even after creating distance, the emotional experience may continue inside them. Thoughts about the empath can return unexpectedly. Memories may surface during quiet moments. They may dream about the person or find themselves replaying conversations they thought they had moved beyond. Why? Because the empath may have awakened something within them that they had forgotten existed. This is where what looks like obsession can begin. It is not necessarily an obsession with the person themselves. Sometimes the deeper fixation is with the version of themselves they experienced in that person's presence. The empath becomes a mirror. That mirror does not simply show the avoidant what they are missing. It can reveal who they might have been before fear taught them to shut down. And once that reflection has been seen, it can become difficult to completely forget. The more they attempt to suppress the feelings, the more persistent they may become. Something inside them is asking to be recognized through the person who made them feel emotions they thought they had successfully buried. This becomes even more intense because avoidant personalities can develop a strong psychological structure around independence, emotional control, and self-protection. They may appear rational and unaffected because those qualities help them maintain distance from painful emotions. But a deeply empathic person can unintentionally disrupt that system. Their emotional awareness, sensitivity, and ability to recognize what others are feeling can reach places the avoidant normally keeps protected. The empath may notice what is left unsaid. They may sense the fear underneath the silence. They may recognize pain behind the withdrawal. And that can feel incredibly uncomfortable. The avoidant may become restless, confused, irritated, or emotionally conflicted. Not necessarily because the empath has done anything wrong, but because the interaction is exposing something the avoidant has worked hard to keep hidden. In psychological terms, this hidden material can be understood through the idea of the shadow. The parts of ourselves we reject, suppress, or refuse to acknowledge. For an avoidant, that shadow may contain their need for affection, their fear of losing someone, their desire for closeness, their sensitivity, and even their longing to be loved deeply. They may have learned to view these needs as weaknesses, so they push them away. But then they meet someone who expresses emotional depth naturally. Someone who can experience closeness without losing their identity. Someone who can face pain with compassion instead of immediately escaping it. Suddenly, the avoidant is confronted with qualities they have denied within themselves. That confrontation can create emotional turbulence. They may experience confusion, old emotional reactions, sudden withdrawal, or an intense desire to regain control. Yet even while distancing themselves, they may continue thinking about the empath because something has been awakened. The obsession, then, may represent more than romantic desire. The empath has become a symbol of an unresolved inner conflict. They represent a choice between continuing to live behind emotional defenses or beginning to integrate the parts of themselves they have spent years rejecting. The empath did not necessarily create this conflict. They simply revealed it. The avoidant sees someone who can remain emotionally present without becoming consumed. Someone who can approach vulnerability without treating it as weakness. And someone who can sit with difficult emotions instead of immediately running from them. That can create a profound psychological rupture. The avoidant may feel unsettled, not simply because they are falling in love, but because their familiar emotional identity is being challenged. The empath becomes both the trigger and the potential doorway toward healing. And once those hidden emotions have been touched, returning completely to emotional numbness may no longer feel the same. This is why the connection between an avoidant and a superempath can feel so intense. Symbolically, they represent two opposite ways of dealing with emotion, one built around distance and self-protection, the other grounded in emotional awareness, openness, and deep sensitivity. Their encounter can become more than a relationship. It can become a confrontation between the self the avoidant has learned to protect and the self they have spent years trying to forget. Inside avoidant, this is where the real story begins. This is more than two people having different personalities. It is the unfolding of a deeper psychological struggle where two opposite inner forces are brought together and in some way are being pushed toward balance. The avoidant often experiences closeness as a threat. Deep intimacy can trigger fears of being consumed, controlled, hurt, or losing their sense of independence. The superempath operates differently. They have learned to feel emotions deeply. notice what exists beneath spoken words, and remain present with another person's emotions without becoming completely overwhelmed by them. That contrast creates a powerful tension. The empath can feel almost like an emotional opposite to the avoidant. They notice things the avoidant is used to hiding. They sense emotions the avoidant rarely expresses. They offer a level of emotional awareness that can feel unfamiliar, even unsettling, to someone who has spent years protecting themselves through distance. When these two people meet, neither may fully understand why the connection feels so powerful. Yet both can feel an invisible pull toward each other. And that attraction may come from something deeper than romance. Both individuals can carry wounds that contribute to the dynamic. The empath may have experienced being ignored, misunderstood, or emotionally dismissed, while the avoidant may have learned to disconnect from their own feelings because emotional dependence once felt unsafe. So the relationship can become a reflection of their internal struggles. The empath naturally moves toward emotional honesty, understanding, and connection. The avoidant instinctively moves backward when that same depth becomes too intense. This creates a strange combination of comfort and fear. The avoidant may feel unusually safe around the empath while simultaneously becoming terrified of how much that safety affects them. They want the nurturing presence, but they also fear becoming dependent on it. The empath, meanwhile, may sense that there is much more beneath the avoidant's detached exterior. Their interest is not necessarily about rescuing someone. It can come from recognizing an emotional depth that the avoidant themselves has learned to hide. In this sense, the connection becomes symbolic. It represents two divided parts trying to come back together. The avoidant may become intensely preoccupied because the empath embodies qualities they have never fully permitted themselves to experience: vulnerability, closeness, emotional honesty, and the ability to be accepted without constantly protecting themselves. So the fixation is not always about the individual alone. It can be about everything that person awakens inside them. The avoidant sees something in the empath that they struggle to access within themselves. The relationship, therefore, becomes difficult to simply dismiss. Their mind keeps returning to it because something deep inside has been disturbed. The independent side and the relational side, the logical mind and the emotional heart, the protected self and the vulnerable self. These opposing forces can no longer remain completely separate once they have been awakened. For someone who takes pride in emotional control, this can be deeply unsettling. Suddenly, thoughts of the empath appear without permission. Memories return unexpectedly. Small moments become meaningful. The avoidant may realize they are thinking about this person far more than they intended. The connection becomes a psychological space where transformation can occur. It exposes unconscious patterns in both people, but especially in the avoidant. Behind the emotional walls, they may begin to recognize how fragile those defenses actually are. And the empath can become a bridge between the different parts of the avoidant's personality. Not by forcing them to change, but simply by showing them what emotional safety can feel like. That is why physical distance does not always end the psychological connection. The avoidant may step away, but the inner impact can remain. The person becomes more than a romantic memory. They become a reflection of something the avoidant secretly longs to integrate within themselves. This is also why avoidants may test emotional connections. Their inner world can be governed by unspoken rules designed to keep vulnerability under control. When they meet someone who seems capable of seeing beyond those defenses, they may instinctively begin testing the relationship. These tests are not always deliberate or manipulative. Often they come from fear. The avoidant may suddenly withdraw, become quiet, stop responding, act colder than usual, or create emotional distance. Then they watch what happens. Deep down, they may be trying to answer a question they cannot easily ask directly. Will you still be safe if I show you the worst parts of me? They may expect the empath to become angry. They may expect criticism, rejection, or abandonment. They may believe that once they become difficult, the other person will eventually leave. But when the empath responds with emotional steadiness rather than panic, something unexpected happens. The avoidant's expectations are challenged. Instead of being punished for withdrawing, they encounter patience. Instead of immediate rejection, they see emotional stability. Instead of someone chasing desperately for reassurance, they encounter someone who can remain grounded. That can be deeply confusing. The avoidant may begin wondering why their silence did not destroy the connection, why their emotional distance did not immediately cause the other person to disappear, why this person seems capable of feeling deeply without losing control of themselves. And this curiosity can intensify the fixation. The empath becomes unusual in the avoidant's mind, a person who can experience emotional intensity without becoming consumed by it. Someone who can care without becoming desperate. Someone who can remain compassionate without abandoning their own center. That kind of emotional resilience can become almost mysterious to an avoidant. They may start quietly studying the empath. How do they remain so calm? Why don't they chase? Why don't they demand constant reassurance? Why can they feel so much and still remain whole? The avoidant may not say these things aloud, but internally, the questions continue. Their mind begins replaying conversations and analyzing small interactions. They wonder what the empath is thinking. They notice changes in tone, distance, and behavior. They may create subtle situations simply to determine whether the connection is still there. These behaviors are not necessarily about control. Often they are attempts to find evidence that emotional safety is real. For much of their life, the avoidant may have experienced intimacy as dangerous. They create distance because closeness threatens the emotional structure they built to protect themselves. They may genuinely want connection while simultaneously fearing everything connection could expose. Then the empath arrives and reaches a part of them that ordinary relationships never touched. Even if the relationship ends, that emotional imprint can remain. The avoidant may continue living normally on the outside. They may distract themselves, focus on work, meet new people, or enter other relationships. Yet internally, they may continue comparing those experiences with what they felt around the empath. They may wonder why another person seems perfect, yet somehow the connection feels empty. What they miss may not simply be attention, affection, or romance. They may miss the emotional atmosphere the empath created, the feeling of being able to exist without constantly performing, defending, explaining, or running away. That realization can arrive much later. In quiet moments, the avoidant may remember conversations where they felt understood without having to explain everything. They may recall the calmness of the connection. They may even begin unconsciously adopting small aspects of the empath's way of communicating and relating to others. The fixation exists because something was awakened. It was not necessarily created by what the empath did. It came from what their presence revealed. And once the avoidant has experienced that hidden part of themselves, forgetting the person does not always mean forgetting the transformation they represented. Inside avoidant, the deeper truth is that sometimes the person we cannot stop thinking about is not simply the person we lost. They are the mirror that showed us a part of ourselves we were never ready to see. Eventually, the avoidant may begin to question the emotional system they have relied on for years. They once believed that distance, independence, and emotional guardedness would keep them safe. But now they start to realize that this way of living does not actually create peace. It only creates emptiness. The empath represented a completely different path, one built on openness, genuine connection, emotional honesty, and authenticity. And after experiencing even a glimpse of that world, the avoidant may find that everything else feels strangely incomplete. Their inner compass begins to change. For years, detachment told them where to go. Now, something deeper begins pulling them toward what they once avoided. It is not that they suddenly become emotionally skilled or completely overcome their fears. Instead, they begin to feel the absence of something meaningful. The empath becomes a silent reference point. Even after that person is no longer around, emotionally intense situations can trigger an unconscious question. What would they say right now? How would they understand this? What would they notice that I am refusing to see? The person who once avoided emotional influence may now find themselves deeply affected by it. Their old method of navigating life no longer feels reliable. In its place, a quieter intuition begins to emerge, one that was awakened through the empath's presence and continues to exist even after the connection has ended. That is why the fixation can feel so difficult to escape. It reaches deeper than simple attraction. It touches the way the avoidant understands themselves and the world around them. Their obsession with the superempath can be the visible expression of a much deeper internal disruption. Someone who has spent years mastering emotional distance rarely expects another person to reach beneath the defenses and touch something genuine. Those walls were built for protection. But the avoidant may eventually discover that the same walls keeping pain outside are also keeping love, healing, vulnerability, and self-discovery outside. The empath does not necessarily tear those defenses apart. Instead, they reflect what exists behind them. Through emotional presence and understanding, they can unintentionally bring suppressed feelings back into awareness. At first, the avoidant may interpret this experience as discomfort. They may feel confused, irritated, overwhelmed, or even resentful. But beneath those reactions, something else can begin developing. Longing. Not necessarily a longing to possess the empath, but a longing for the emotional version of themselves that appeared when they were around that person. That distinction matters. The avoidant may not actually be obsessed with the individual as much as they are with the experience of finally feeling something authentic within themselves. In this sense, the fixation becomes a response to inner fragmentation. For survival, the avoidant may have created a carefully controlled version of themselves, a self that appears strong, independent, unaffected, and impossible to hurt. But beneath that constructed identity may be a more vulnerable self that still wants to connect, feel, trust, and be understood. The empath becomes a bridge between those two selves. Their presence reveals that another way of living might actually be possible. That is why the memory can remain powerful even when the relationship is gone. The avoidant may try to suppress the thoughts, keep busy, focus on other things, or enter new relationships. Yet the emotional imprint continues returning. It does not come from outside pressure. It comes from within. Something in them has recognized a truth they can no longer completely unsee. The empath becomes a symbol of unrealized potential, the possibility of becoming more emotionally whole rather than remaining trapped inside the identity created by fear. And once someone has experienced what it feels like to be deeply seen and accepted, returning to complete emotional disconnection can become painful. The avoidant may replay old conversations and memories, not simply because they miss the person, but because those memories reconnect them with a state of being they rarely experienced before. For a moment, they felt real. They felt understood without having to explain everything. They felt accepted without having to perform. They felt emotionally present without needing to run. The mind returns to those moments because something inside refuses to let that realization disappear. The fixation becomes an internal message. Something has to change. What was once buried can no longer remain completely unconscious. This is where the experience can become much bigger than the relationship itself. The connection may become the beginning of self-awareness, forcing the avoidant to recognize the emotional patterns they have spent years avoiding. The empath is no longer simply another person from their past. They become a catalyst. Through that encounter, the avoidant was shown a possible life beyond constant self-protection. A life where vulnerability does not automatically equal weakness. Where intimacy does not have to mean losing independence. Where being emotionally seen does not have to result in rejection. Even if the empath eventually walks away, the vision can remain. The avoidant may continue carrying an internal connection to the possibility they represented. The obsession becomes like a small flame inside a dark room. It keeps illuminating the parts of the self that were previously ignored, quietly asking the avoidant to stop running from what they already know exists within them. And perhaps the deepest realization is this: they are not necessarily addicted to the empath. They may be attached to the person they became when their defenses temporarily disappeared. They may be longing for the version of themselves that could feel without fear, connect without panic, and exist without constantly protecting their heart. The empath simply became the mirror that revealed that version. So the deeper purpose of this fixation may not be reunion or possession at all. It may be integration. The unconscious is calling attention to the pieces of the self that were rejected long ago. The avoidant is being confronted with emotions, fears, needs, and truths that can no longer be permanently buried. The empath did not have to force this transformation. Their presence was enough. They showed the avoidant what emotional wholeness could feel like. And once that possibility has been experienced, the old emptiness can become harder to tolerate. This is why the connection can remain psychologically powerful long after physical distance appears. It is not simply a story about romance. It is the story of someone encountering a mirror that showed them the self they had forgotten, and then having to decide whether they will keep running from that reflection or finally turn around and meet it. Inside avoidant, the deepest obsession is not always with another person. Sometimes it is the soul's quiet demand to become whole again.